Next up, really excited, we have Annie Shepperd, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the wonderful partner Salix Finance. So, ladies and gentlemen, she's going to tell us about, or answer the question, how are we today going to make an impact on leaders of the country? Annie?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to start by saying, you know, as we sit in this room, the civic engineers, and we look at the great names of these engineers, and these engineers who created the great wealth of this country did so based on an industrial revolution where coal was the fossil fuel that drove what we have here today. And I think there's something quite sort of, I don't know, it's quite sort of moving about thinking that we're sitting in a place where today we're really talking about a new type of economy that doesn't rely on fossil fuels. And why I agreed to speak at this conference was because what I've learned about the speakers we've had today is people speak with great passion and commitment and great ideas about what we can actually do. Because I'm going to talk today about some of the concerns that I have about the situation that our country is in, and in fact the challenge that's facing the world. And we've heard from some of the speakers this morning some of the statistics that should be shocking. Now, what I want to say about this situation is really, I come from a position where I'd really like to recommend a book I've just recently reading, I wish I'd written it, which is about why politics is not working. And this book, in essence, is saying that when we have political ideas, and we're trying to take those ideas because they're important, and moving that journey to actually delivery of that, there is a systemic approach, and at each part of that approach, our leadership is getting it wrong. And what we are seeing in many of the political sort of initiatives that we have in this country, a disconnect from intent and delivery. And I'm going to suggest today that some of the things that we're going to be seeing, we're going to talk about, is we're seeing that in action. And what we need to do is something different to really get our country back on course about what happens for the people of this country. Now, next, right, okay. So, the proposition that I'm coming to is that net zero, we are in serious trouble. All of our dates for achieving our targets have been set back. And I don't know where you stand on targets, but I have found, as I look at the targets of what our country is trying to achieve in all parts, there aren't many targets that we're meeting. So the confidence level that we should be having that somehow we're going to meet these targets by 2050 and not pay a price for that is ludicrous. And I'm going to talk about some of the price that people in our communities are paying today for what is happening. The government set up a committee that was going to be looking at what the country needs to do. That committee was quietly abolished. A new language is emerging about removing the burden of the green economy for working people. This is all to do with, I mean, I could do speeches on each part of these points that last a long time. This is all to do with the way that the burden of the cost of energy has been placed on the consumer. The truth is that we have at this point in time, and I can give you the references if people are interested in this, we have the data that shows we have in 1930, that in 2015, the Paris Agreement, we are way off target, and we are heading for 2%. There seems to be a silence in the world about why we are suffering severe weather conditions, and a reluctance to explain to the nation why our severe weather conditions are related directly to what we're doing with fossil fuels. I actually think, I have to say this, I know that you are an informed audience, but I'm not convinced that our nation understands what net zero means and the relationship about what is happening with weather and what is happening with energy to be able to see these connections. This is the last time I will speak on behalf of Salix Finance. I leave my job as the Chief Executive next week. And one of the reasons why I become the chair of the Chartered Institution of Water Engineers is because I want to say, when I look at what's happening to our country to do with sewage and the whole relationship that this has to the weather conditions, I think we've got to put some passion into some of the changes that need to be made. And the other language that is emerging, isn't it, is that artificial intelligence is the new fear for our future because it's going to take our jobs. And so I'm very concerned that actually what's happening is that the conversations we should be having about the impact that our world is facing by climate change is actually not at the head of the agenda. I believe that local government in this country and national government and international leadership is in crisis. The years of austerity, it's very difficult in political situations to talk with fearless respect to politicians that the whole starving of resources that austerity gave has left local government in a dreadful state where it's starved of resources, and the greatest hardship in winter is caused by those least able to protect themselves. The government's clean energy plan is already facing great challenges when we know that some of the work to create the new clean energy is unaffordable. And they're having to relook at what those policies mean if we're to have green energy as an important source for the country. Now, when we start looking at, I can show the articles now about the transmission of that energy, where we're at a situation where in order to put this in, local people are being asked to take incentives to have pylons in their area. And people are not very happy about these things. So I suggest that actually it's not enough just to have a policy that says, can we give a cash incentive so that people will put up with this, when people are really concerned about the health concerns, about living next to pylons. And I have grave doubts that the national leadership is really, are we listening to what is really going on around the world? Parts of our world are suffering famine because there isn't enough water. And what is impacting today is, I think, our people of this nation are suffering from global impacts of weather. Now, I just wanted to put this up about what's happening with flooding. Funding demands for social care and education in local authorities putting our local government under pressure. Surface water management in this country is an absolute lottery. Nationally, we're being exposed to what happens to our leadership in crisis. I believe that they'll be making movies similar to The Crown on COVID crisis and what happened to our leadership. It is shocking. Decarbonisation is beginning to be, is it decarbonisation or is it the economy? When we have wonderful speakers today who are talking about how it's possible for us to recreate our economy that becomes a green economy. There are experts here today that know how to do this. Our response is we're opening more oil fields in the North Sea. And more local authorities, if you're interested in this stuff, are reporting that they are unable to balance their books. So the challenge for local people is really great in this country at the moment. Now, I want to talk about sewage because it's all related to the weather, about what's happening. And I just put some notes here because I was thinking about this really. So what this chart shows is sewage poured into protected habitats, went on in England and Wales last year for 300,000 hours. Now, I don't have to ask people in this room, are you concerned about sewage on our beaches and in our rivers? Because if I asked you to raise your hand, I would suspect that there are few that would not say it matters, it's important. Now, do you know that 300,000 hours is 14,500 days? What that actually means in real terms is that for every hour, on average, right, every hour last year, every hour, 34 incidents of discharging sewage into our areas that are protected areas was going on. This is a scandal. Flooding caused by burning fossil fuels. This is Wiltshire and Angus in Scotland. There was a wonderful member of staff from Derby Council who was on the radio as Derby Council was flooded earlier. We heard from shopkeepers and from owners of homes the devastation that this had caused to their lives. And Derby Council said, actually, where we had the money and we put in the protection, the way that we were going to stop that flooding, that worked. And that area of our city centre was protected. We didn't have enough money to do the whole thing. And so that area got flooded. So the technology exists that we know how to do these things. And if any of you are interested, go onto the site of the Environmental Agency, because these storms that we're having, it's quite clear, these are not going to go away. These are not isolated incidents. Our weather conditions are changing. And our nation doesn't understand that it's related to the whole way the world is using fossil fuels. So consequently, there's a whole education program about everyone understanding what is really going on here. And while we understand what's happening with us that's flooding, we also have that we know, we're now on course, that 2023 is the warmest year on record. Antarctic seas fell to record levels. Fires across southern Europe dominated the news over the summer. I went to the Greek islands. I have a wee house in one of the Greek islands, which I've had for many, many years. And that Greek island has had no rainfall for over a year, while in northern Greece, there is devastation from flooding. So this is affecting economies. You heard about what happened in Rhodes, in the islands where, we were looking at what's happening to all those British tourists. What was happening to the Greeks was their industries and their homes were being destroyed. China, Russia and India did not sign the methane pact, methane being one of the thing that we need to take quickly out of our emissions. And I'm looking as I get ready to go to the COP in Dubai, is there going to be a change in the international approach to really signing up to some of the challenges that the world faces? But the current plans of Earth is that the production of fossil fuels are going to be double what the Earth needs to keep to 1.5 degrees. At today's conference, I know from listening to the speakers who've spoken, the experts are in this room. I do not believe that the top-down politics is working. So the proposition I want to make to the people in this room, every single one of you, is this. It seems to me that there are 4 simple core issues for the people of this country. What are the priorities for our new government? We know there is going to be a general election. What are the priorities for our new government in decarbonising the UK? And there's such things that have been talked today about. Where are we? What are the priorities? Where should we be doing things first? How do we do things in the right order? How do we get the most for the investment that we have from the private sector and from the public sector? We want actions for our new government to prevent flooding, which is destroying people's livelihoods, the misery that it causes. And that is being caused by the changing weather conditions because of the world's reliance on fossil fuels. We want action to prevent wildfires in the UK. Not only are they creating more carbon emissions, but if you look at the wildfires that there were in California, and it's perfectly possible with the dryness that we have, that it could happen here, people's homes, people's livelihoods, people's families are at risk. We need action to prevent farming and sewage pollution in our rivers and seas. And I think yesterday the apology from the Environment Agency and a recognition that they are failing to supervise and to regulate in the duties that they have farming, because there's a silent pollution going on that's coming from farming and industries into the nation's water. What I'm proposing for this conference is that everybody here has a contribution to make to what we can put forward to not party political, to all of the parties. This is what we, the informed individuals who understand this stuff, have to say should be the priorities of the next government. I think such an approach will get a lot of publicity, will get a lot of understanding, and actually will have a real meaning for people in our towns and in our countries. And the experts are here, and they are here. And that's what I believe we can actually do together to try to turn some of this political vacuum that we have about what really matters and what is important for our country and for making people's lives feel more secure at a time of what is great unrest and troubling times. I thank you so much for your listening.